Hey YouTube, welcome to another episode of Sipping with Simone. Today I decided to wear my glasses because I feel like my glasses illustrate two really good points and are really apropos for today's talk, or a little YouTube video for today. I don't like wearing my glasses, first of all, because I don't know, I've always felt like my glasses looked weird on me, and it was always a reminder that my eyes were getting weaker and they're not what they used to be. And second of all, these glasses are Kate Spade glasses, that's the brand. And so in today's episode, I want to talk about Kate Spade. I want to talk about Anthony Bourdain. I want to talk about depression. I want to talk about suicide. I want to talk about mental health and mental illness. And really all of it together, and see how much we could talk about and have a discussion. Really, that's what I'm looking for, a discussion. And so I'm wearing my Kate Spade glasses because if you haven't heard already, Kate Spade died by suicide this week. Anthony Bourdain died by suicide this week. And my glasses represent, I guess, the key point that I want to bring out in this video, which is it's okay to sometimes depend on things that were created to help you live your best life. It's okay to depend on things that were created to help you live your best life. I'll say it again. It's okay to reach out to things to help you that were created to help you live your best life and to go through life. I will first say, okay, many caveats and disclaimers. I am not a mental health professional. I am approaching this subject in the same way, well, in a way where I want us to have an open discussion. I want to raise some points, and I'm going to try my best to approach this discussion, this topic, with as much compassion and openness as I can muster. I actually prayed about doing this video and prayed before doing this video because I thought to myself, the last thing I want to do is to put something out there, whether this video or something else, that's going to cause unnecessary pain to somebody or spread unnecessary truths. So that's my hope with this video. I'm also going to be really careful about my language. I believe words have power. I am learning, and sometimes I fail in terms of using the right words to describe things, to explain things. But I believe that it's important that we refer to suicide and the person who takes their own life, we refer to that as dying by suicide as opposed to committing suicide. The idea being, it's not about, political correctness and having to tiptoe around things and subjects, but that words have power, and we want to take away a lot of the pejorative narrative and this negative shame that that surrounds the word committing suicide. If you say committing suicide, it sounds like a crime. You start to use language of sin, etc. And I mean, goodness, I didn't really know where to go with this video completely. I don't think this video is the place or really the time right now to talk about death and sin and suicide. When you talk about, we talked about crime, but when you talk about sin rather, in particular, sin tends to carry a lot of just negative weight with it. It's a really shame-laden word. And I thought that probably is not the discussion to have right now, unless and until I know how to do that in a really sensitive way. All that to say, I prefer that we use the word die by suicide. And this video is very needed, and I think it's no coincidence not only that I have Kate Spade glasses, but when I posted my video on should somebody go to law school, should you go to law school this week, I had somebody on Instagram ask me, could you talk about mental health, like in the Black community, as women, or just in general? Mental health is a hard thing to talk about in general. There's so many things you could cover, but I wanted to talk about my own experience with my mental health, and I also wanted to add to hopefully help contribute to this whole push to destigmatizing talking about our health and destigmatizing, talking about our struggles and our emotions, etc. Mental health, well, let's start where at the beginning, which is a very important place to start. Everyone has mental health. I'll say it again. Everyone has mental health. I believe that we are multifaceted, complex human beings. All human beings are. I believe that we have physical health, and I don't think very many of you would disagree with me on that. And I believe that we ought to take care of our physical health. I believe that we also have spiritual health, and perhaps in another vlog further down the line, I'll talk about spiritual health. But I also believe that we have mental health. We all have mental health. Whether you are mentally ill or you're not, you still have mental health. Just like if somebody injures their knee, we could still talk about their physical health. If somebody has schizophrenia, if somebody is living with depression, we could still talk about mental health as well. They still have mental health. And even if you don't feel like you've ever been depressed, or even if you feel like everything's hunky-dory in your life, you too still have mental health. So we'll start there. So I'm hoping just saying that helps people realize that this is not a discussion about, people who are weak or people who are crazy, terms that we really shouldn't use, crazy or insane. It's not a discussion about those people versus people who actually know how to do life and who are strong. In fact, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to mental illness, it's not a discussion about strength. It's not a discussion about a lack of, like an inability of some sort or some kind of flaw. Mental illness really should be seen and treated like we treat all other health problems, like diabetes, right? So I wanted to get that point across. Mental health over the years has become really, really near and dear and close to my heart as I have become more aware of it and seen how it's played into my life. So God is really interesting. Sorry, I have notes, which I'm not looking at, but my computer is going on like sleeping. God's really interesting because it so many times in my life I'm like something will be happening in my life, and at the same time my work experiences provide answers to what's happening in my life. So, or my school experiences will, refer to what's happening in my life. So while I'm not a mental health professional by any means or an expert, and while I will say this now and I'll say it again, you need to consult a mental health expert if you have questions. I will say that I am a trained facilitator with the Dr. Neil Nedley Depression Recovery Program, which is about giving people lifestyle tools to get them out of mild depression. I was also a wellness advisor with a government department. And at that department, the mental health strategy, we helped create the mental health strategy, one of the first departments to do that, and we had one of the strongest mental health strategies, so I had to help implement that strategy and help implement programs and tools about mental health in the workplace. So that was my job at one point. I am currently on many different mental health networks at my place of employment. And so, yeah, mental health is important to me professionally. But also, when I went to law school, I would have to say that was the first time in my life that I actually came head to head with like my mental health. I think I could say in retrospect now that I was actually depressed in law school for a period of time. And I don't judge myself for that, and that's an important thing. If you are feeling, if you have depression or whatever the case may be, you shouldn't judge yourself for your illness or your feelings or whatever it is. But I would have to say that I was not feeling too cool in law school. And then when I wrote my bar exam and I was with the Quebec bar, there were months that I did not sleep. I remember from January, and I could tell you the month and the year. From January 2015 to about May 2015, I did not sleep. Sure, okay, I slept on and off, but I had chronic insomnia for 5 months because of the anxiety. It was the first time that my anxiety caused a problem. I didn't even realize I had problems with anxiety. But now when I sit down and think about it in my state where I'm happier and healthier and I can actually sleep now, I realize that I've always been a little bit more anxious than I realized. As I've said in prior videos, I bite my nails to the quick. That's why my nails are so super short. I literally pull out my hair. That's why I have some bald patches. And those are often symptomatic of anxiety. Trouble dealing with your anxiety, or even an anxiety disorder. Now, I've never been officially diagnosed with depression or anxiety or anything, but these instances have made me realize and really tune myself into what's going on with my mental health. I think we all need to pay attention to our mental health. I think that it is not only, like I mentioned before, it's a pillar of your health, but I feel like a lot of times in life we just go through life, la-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da, and we don't pay attention to, like, oh my gosh, when was the last time I felt joy? Why is it so hard for me to get out of bed in the morning? I'm having these thoughts. I'm having these really concerning thoughts or voices or whatever the case may be. What could that be? I think a lot of times we need to do the investigative work with what's going on with our health and with our total health, and especially our mental health. So when I was in law school, and even up until recently, I started to see a therapist. Even during the bar, I saw a therapist. I have no shame in saying that I saw a therapist. In fact, I believe everybody should probably see a therapist at least, I don't want to say at least once, but you should be followed through with a therapist. Like literally go to a few sessions and just have that kind of tune-up. You don't need to be crazy to see a shrink. And I know there's so much stigma around actually going out there and speaking to a mental health professional. I'm mentioning that I see a therapist, even though that's confidential information. I don't have to say that to anybody. But I say that because I'm coming to realize that I have somewhat of a platform. People tend to listen to me. And even though, not everybody likes me, I don't expect everybody to like me, I think most people respect me. I think it's important to see somebody who you respect say that they seek help from time to time. That sometimes they struggle, I struggle, and I seek help. And I went to go see a therapist not only because I was struggling at the time, but because I started to realize as I got older that I have issues. And the thing is, not only I have issues, but we all have issues. And so going to an objective third party helps me unpack those issues, helps me first identify those issues, helps me unpack those issues, and helps me do the work so that I can be the person I need to be. I think a lot of times we don't go seek therapy, or we don't ask ourselves these introspective questions because we're afraid of the answers, perhaps, and we don't want to do the work. But anyway, I went to my therapist, and I think going to a therapist is just like going to see a personal trainer. There was a time during one of my summers when I was in law school, I was back home for that summer, and I quickly realized the only way I was going to get through that summer is if I had a gym membership. And of course, once you get a gym membership in many gyms, they ask you if you want to do a personal training evaluation. So I did the evaluation, and that's always like their route to get you to sign up for personal training. And in my head, I'm like, this is a summer job. I'm not making that much. Personal training is hella expensive, but in going through the analysis, going through the assessment, talking to the trainer at the time, the guy who was selling me the training, he was like, honestly, everybody needs personal training, from an athlete to a newbie. And I was like, okay, that's a compelling argument. So I did personal training for those 4 months. I didn't lose a pound. I did not lose one single pound. But I learned so much. And a lot of the exercises that I learned then are exercises I do even now. And what I realized from personal training is like, it showed me my weaknesses, musculature, my musculature weaknesses in terms of my muscular conditioning and my cardiovascular endurance, showed me my weaknesses, things I need to work on. But it also taught me some tools I could use outside of my training sessions. And that's exactly what therapy is. Therapy will show you maybe some loopholes and some blind spots that you have, as well as give you tools to use so when you're not in therapy, you can just go through life as a happy, emotionally well human being, right? Therapy has taught me to think about my thinking. That's one thing my therapist said. She said we live in a society where we don't really have anything that prompts us to think about our thinking. A lot of therapy uses the technique called cognitive behavioral therapy. Can't speak today. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is based on the premise that if we change our thoughts, we can change our feelings. So insofar as we have mild depression or depression, I'm taking depression as an example, right? Any mood disorder that can be helped by changing our thoughts, then CBT can really be effective. So CBT is really effective for depression and anxiety. And I've found that changing my thoughts, challenging my thoughts, taking every thought captive and making them obey Christ, but also making sure that they actually make sense and respond to reality, have actually been quite helpful. So that's why I think you should go to therapy if you need to. I also feel like another reason why I'm doing this video is because so many people are struggling with their mental health, but we don't know it, and we need to go beyond a discussion. Like, obviously we have to have a discussion to know what to do, but my hope is eventually as a society we go beyond discussion and we go into action, and we try to think of some really tangible, effective ways that we can help one another and help ourselves. I mean, whenever somebody dies by suicide, many times it comes as a complete surprise. Like with Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain, even Robin Williams. So many people said, oh my gosh, we never knew. Like, and these are people who, if not rich, made other people happy. They were comedians. And it just goes to show, well, one, money, they say money can't buy happiness. I kind of disagree. When I have money, I'm a very happy person. But it doesn't matter how rich you are, right? Richness does not give you deep-seated joy, cannot always fight anxiety, cannot always assuage or fight against pain. But it also shows us that just because you may look happy on the outside doesn't mean you're happy on the inside. So for Bell Let's Talk, I posted a Facebook status kind of telling you what I'm telling you now about seeking therapy and how I had a really good friend who encouraged me to go speak to a professional. And I had some comments saying, oh my gosh, Simone, I never knew. You always came off as so strong and confident to me. I mean, it's not, being strong and confident is not, the opposite or incongruous with having depression, right? The face of depression could look like this. You could smile and you could have depression. I remember one time at church, one of my good friends said to another lady in earshot, so another lady was talking about how, she wondered, am I depressed? And she's like, the other lady, my good friend, said, you're not depressed. And that's how we often treat depression, because we look at people and we're like, okay, you're depressed, you're not depressed, and we think we can see it, but we can't see it. You have to understand, depression is not sadness. Depression, at least maybe from my perspective and from how it affected me, depression is listlessness. It is a lack of energy. It is a lack of hope. It is feeling helpless. It is pain. It is fatigue. It is irritability. It is an inability to feel joy and pleasure. That's depression. Depression literally is like, my capacity for feeling is suppressed. My capacity for acting and for doing and for living is suppressed. That's depression. Not about being blue or crying all the time. It's debilitating. That's what depression is for many people, not for all. So we can't just look at a person and say whether or not they're depressed. But another thing I want to talk about is that we really try to figure out how could we create a society where we don't have these surprises, where we're not faced with another suicide and we're like, oh, I didn't know. And I'm thinking that I was, before I thought of this video, I was trying to come up with some solutions, but the fact of the matter is, each of us are just so tunnel vision and so insular in terms of our own lives that we often don't see people drowning around us. And we don't know the signs and symptoms of drowning. So the first step would be education. I have a variety of books here, which I'll get to. But there's so many sites that you can read and go on to be educated. And I'm going to post those links below. The first step is education. The second step, I would say, is to look out for people who you think may be drowning. Let me back that up a little. If I were to speak to anybody, I can only speak, I'm going to talk about depression in particular. Anybody who's depressed, and maybe this is ineffective, but the only thing I can come up with right now, as somebody who has been, depressed or has, struggled with depression, and perhaps maybe even still struggles with depression from time to time, is the importance to reach out for help and keep reaching. I know that's easier said than done, and I know some days that is impossible and some days that's really hard. Goodness, especially when you're already tired, to keep reaching out, and when you reach out, that help that you were reaching out for ends up not being effective. I know how discouraging that could be and how self-defeating that could be. I know how hard it could be to find one therapist and have to change and find another therapist. While it has not been my experience, I know many people have to start one type of medication and go on to another. I know that's really hard, but for me, I've always told myself, keep reaching out for help, keep calling friends, keep going to the gym and exercising, keep reading your Bible if you are religious, keep going to work, keep trying to do things that might have the possibility or potential of pleasure. But because I know that's so hard for the depressed individual to do, I think as a society we need to look out for the people who are drowning and throw out the lifeline. I think we need to get into the habit of calling all of our friends, especially the ones who seem to be doing very well. They say that one of the major triggers for suicide, I believe, could be divorce, financial setback, depression. So I would say, I think we need to start thinking, if we see a friend or if we know a friend is going through divorce, to pay particular attention to them. Or if we know a friend is facing a financial setback or difficulty, to pay particular attention to them. Or if we know a friend is, whatever problem they're going through, to pay particular attention to the friends who we know, given their life circumstances, may be drowning. However, we also know that there are people who do not share as openly as some of us about their struggles. Some people may be going through a financial struggle, and because of the stigma, not only of depression, but their financial struggle, they're not going to share that with you. We need to get into a habit of looking after people. And when we ask, how are you? To really ask, how are you? Now, maybe that's not really practical with strangers, but if we could do, each of us, a little bit of investigative work, and just to make sure that the people around us are truly okay, maybe, I'm thinking, maybe this is naive, maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm hoping that maybe we'll be able to catch somebody before they end their life. I'm thinking a lot of things right now. My thoughts are everywhere. I wish, I am so sorry for people. I don't want this to sound pitying, so I'm really trying to find the right words. I'm so sorry if you're going through a lot of pain right now. If you're watching this and you have suicidal ideations, or you may be struggling with some other mental health issue. If you are struggling, if you are suffering, if you're just, keep on keeping on, I am so sorry for people who are struggling. I'm so sorry for people who are struggling. I'm so sorry if you are struggling. I'm sorry if I'm struggling. It's horrible. And my heart absolutely goes out to people who truly are struggling. There is no, or there should be no shame around suicide, none of this talk of selfishness. My heart only goes out to those individuals that who were so enmeshed in pain and helplessness and hopelessness that they saw killing themselves as the only way out of that situation. I don't know, words escape me in terms of how to better that situation. One idea I had, so going back to the question of like, how do we help one another and to just be interested in one another, is here's my call to action for this video. I want each person watching this video to pick at least, could be more, but at least one individual and write to them and tell them how much you mean, how much they mean rather to you. So I want you to pick one individual and tell them how much they mean to you. Because I think all of us need to realize that we matter to somebody. I've always lived my life with the philosophy that there's a purpose for my life. That if I wake up in the morning, no matter how hellish my life may be, or the things I have waiting for me during my day, if God still allows my breath to be in my body and tells my heart to pump, if that's still happening, there must be a plan and a purpose for my life. And so I want people to realize that there's a plan and purpose for their life. There's a plan for your life. There's a purpose for your life. You're here for a reason. I also want everybody to realize that they matter. You matter. And you matter to at least one person. And I'm hoping that perhaps the most tangible way to really convince you of that is if you received a note from somebody saying that you matter. So I encourage all of you to do that. Not only will it help me realize how many people actually watch this video, the stuff I produce, but it'll actually perhaps serve as some really needed encouragement to people who are struggling. That's mostly what I wanted to say. I have a lot of books here. Let me go through my books here. Okay, before I go through the books, I do want to make a differentiation between feeling down, feeling blue, mild depression, and actual mental illness, right? Mental health is on a spectrum. I will post a video, I'm going to post a picture of the spectrum right at this point in my video. Here you go. Mental health is on a spectrum. You will always want to be careful of where you are in mental health, but I found, or rather where you are on the spectrum, but I find thinking of mental health as a spectrum helps us stop reducing it to like, am I crazy or am I good? It's not about that. It's about, are you in the green? Are you in the yellow? Are you in the orange? Or are you in the red? And what you need to do, and perhaps what supports you need to access so that you can bring yourself back to the green. So there's a difference between mild depression, and there's a difference between clinical depression and other mental disorders and illnesses where you might need medication and professional help and being seen by a psychiatrist, whatever the case may be. So I don't want to leave people in this video with the idea that, okay, if you're feeling down, all you have to do is go for a walk, all you have to do is eat flax seeds. Seek mental help. Seek mental health, but also seek mental help. Okay? Seek the help of a qualified mental health professional, whether through EAP, Employee Assistance Program, through your workplace, through, if you're a lawyer, your lawyer's assistance program, through your law society, wherever it may be. And also be mindful of whether or not you belong to a population. Wow, I have so many ideas coming right now. Be mindful of whether or not you belong to a population that is particularly susceptible to having mental health issues. Example, if you are in dentistry, law, medicine, make sure you have your mental health support systems around you, because studies have shown that we are statistically, we as in lawyers especially, and people in the health profession, really susceptible to mental health issues like depression, and also, even though it's not a mental health issue per se, alcoholism. So pay special attention to that. If you are a person of color, you're also prone to having mental health issues. Pay attention to that. If you are in, again, I mentioned divorced, financial situations, but like even if you're single, like I often have to realize to myself that, you know, being by yourself could be really hard. So I have to make sure that I ensure that I am adequately supported, and that I make sure that I don't isolate myself and I plug into community. So just be mindful of your social structure and your the characteristics about you that might make you more susceptible to mental illnesses, including genetic, including biological. Biological, which may include certain other diseases that are comorbid with depression. For instance, I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is a precursor to hypothyroidism. Typically, thyroid disorders and PCOS have been linked to depression, right? So if you're feeling down, it can very much be, it could be a medical fix. You need to go see a health professional. You might need medication. It could be because of another disease, and maybe if you fix that disease, you're good. Or it could just be like, I'm having a bad day, I'm not myself today, you know, let me go for a walk. So just be mindful of all of that. I have several books that I commend to you for further reading. If you want to know more about mental health, if you are feeling down, and if you are on the spectrum where I guess you're more green to yellow, or you're maintaining your mental health. Of course, again, the quick fix, this is not necessarily the antidote to your illness or problem. You need to do that investigative work to see what's happening with you so you know the solution that works for you. But things that books that I find helpful, my therapist recommended this book to me, which is The Feeling Good Handbook by David Burns. So it goes really through cognitive behavioral therapy. Another book that I really love is Emotional First Aid. At work, I took a course from the Mental Health Commission of Canada on mental health first aid. And so if you have that available in your workplace, I strongly encourage you to take it. And even if you don't have it in your workplace, see how you can bring it to your workplace. I'll put the link below. But mental health first aid reminded me of this book, which is Emotional First Aid. They're similar in many respects, but this one talks more. Whereas mental health first aid talks about mood disorders and psychotic disorders, etc., psychosis, this book talks about emotional issues that you may face, which could very well overlap with some mental health issues. So like healing, rejection, guilt, failure, loneliness. So I found this to be a really helpful book. Another book that my therapist recommended is called The Dance of Anger, A Woman's Guide to Changing the Patterns of Intimate Relationships by Dr. Harriet Lerner. So it's not only about intimate relationships in terms of intimate partners, but also healing your relationship with your parents, with friends, etc. My therapist also recommended this book to me. Haven't read it yet, but it's called A Mind of Your Own by Kelly Brogan. The Truth About Depression and How Women Can Heal Their Bodies to Reclaim Their Lives. It's a New York Times bestseller. Another book that I have been reading and that has been starting to become more relevant to my life is this book called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. This book talks about setting boundaries in your life. And I just came to realize this year that I have no boundaries. And I let people talk to me any which way and treat me any which way often enough. And so this book, I need to read it. I got it for my 23rd birthday and haven't read it yet. And I'm realizing I need to read it. And what's great about this book is that these psychologists come at it from a biblical standpoint. In terms of law, books that I bought while I was in law school were The Unhappy Lawyer, A Roadmap to Finding Meaningful Work Outside of the Law. Truth be honestly told, sometimes going to a therapist will help, but sometimes the solution may actually be to get out of law. That's where this book comes in. The Unhappy Lawyer. And then I also have The Happy Lawyer, Making a Good Life in the Law. So there's chapters in here about happiness and how to be happy as a lawyer. And then I also have A Lawyer's Guide to Healing, Solutions for Addiction and Depression by Don Carroll, who is a lawyer himself. In terms of the Neil Nedley depression recovery program I spoke about. These are the books, well, not this one, but he wrote it. These are the books that come with the depression recovery program. Well, not this one either. These are books I bought after I got trained up as a trainer. The depression recovery program workbook, and also Depression: The Way Out, which gives you a list of causes for depression as well as some lifestyle changes that you could go through. My voice just cracked. So lifestyle changes that may help you. Coming from Dr. Neil Nedley, who is a board certified doctor in internal medicine. He also wrote a book called Proof Positive: How to Reliably Combat Disease and Achieve Optimal Health Through Nutrition and Lifestyle. And he also has a book called The Lost Art of Thinking: How to Improve Emotional Intelligence and Achieve Peak Mental Performance. One thing that also helps me, wait, have I gone through all my books? Kind of. One thing that also helps me when if I'm in a bad mood is I have to have perspective. And what helps me have perspective is to read the stories of other people. So stories like Elizabeth Edwards, resilience. Sometimes I think to myself, I have a crappy life, crappy day, whatever. And then I remember people like Elizabeth Edwards, whose husband cheated on her, who lost a child, and who fought breast cancer. And I suddenly realized that my life is not as bad as I may think it is. I think of, this is another book that I like, You'll Get Through This: Hope and Help for Your Turbulent Times by Max Lucado. Max Lucado is my favorite Christian author. I've turned to this book regularly. I also have this book by Arianna Huffington, the person who founded Huffington Post, Thrive. She talks about it as the third metric of success. And really the pillars of her third metric for success focus on sleep and well-being, as well as giving. Sometimes if you're in a bad mood, it helps to focus on other people and not yourself. It takes you outside of yourself, takes you outside of your head and into the lives of other people. And it helps induce good feelings. I have a whole bunch of stuff on here. One thing I have, or some things that I've implemented to make me happy and boost my mood, if it's simply, you know, I'm having a down period or I'm blue, is to create a happiness jar. Haven't yet done it, but I will. Think, what was the happiest part of the day? And that's really instructive to me to show me what are the things that typically make me happy. I also have taken a page out of this book, which is Things No One Will Tell Fat Girls by Jess Baker, aka the Militant Baker. She has a chapter in here on mental health. She says 100% of humans have brains. Mental health support is for everyone. And she talks about the idea of having a hard day plan before you have a hard day. As in, you know, list the things that you will do, the things that typically make you feel good, the things that typically bring you pleasure, so that when that hard day hits, and unfortunately hard days will hit, you already have your game plan of like, okay, this is what I'm going to go to, and I know I'm immediately going to feel better. She also talks about having your 5-legged support system, so that if one leg of your support system topples, you still have the other 4. And so think about who's going to be in your support system. Maybe a friend, a therapist, maybe a religious leader, maybe your parents, whoever it might be, people you could go to who will support you in your time of need. I have created my own list of things that make me instantly happy, including coloring books. I spent my not my infancy, but my earliest memories in kindergarten was painting and coloring, and that was my thing. I spent every waking moment when I was in kindergarten and really in elementary school drawing something, writing a story of some sort. So I know that the things that make me happy have to do with creativity. Creating things make me happy. I'm a creative person at heart. And so coloring is one of the things that make me happy. And so I have coloring books here. In fact, one of the nicest things my mom ever did for me when she saw that I was struggling in bar school with anxiety and the exam. I mean, my parents are Jamaican. They don't really understand mental health. They don't understand anxiety or insomnia. But my mother, to her credit, bought me some coloring books, which came with a meditation CD. She knew I'd be into that kind of stuff. And so I could color and listen to the meditation CD. I also try to, and I don't do it often enough, but visualization, guided meditation and visualization. So there's so many stuff on YouTube where they read a passage, you're imagining what's happening in the passage, they have soothing music, and that also helps with my anxiety. In fact, that was the only thing that would really help me sleep those 5 months when I was in bar school and could not sleep. What else do I have here? I have here changing perspective. Oh, I wasn't really going to mention this, but there are so many groups out there. There are groups in person that could support you, whether it's a therapy group, depression group, grief group, whatever. But there are also groups on Facebook. And there's one, I don't even want to tell you about this group because I'm afraid you're going to join and then I can no longer tell out my business in this group and get help. I'll just say that there are therapy groups for different special populations on Facebook that you should check out. And if you really, really want the name of this group that I'm a part of, which is great because we all come and we, tell our problems and we help each other solve our issues. If you really want the name of that group, you can message me. But just know that there are groups out there and Facebook is a great tool. I told you there's so much to cover. Maybe I was a little too ambitious in this video. My videos are much too long. I'm going to have to edit this. But my main key point is, well, one, if you're struggling, you are not alone. One thing that life has shown me is that you are never, ever alone in your aloneness. No matter how alone you may feel, there are other people who are going through similar struggles. And I don't know if that's comforting to you, but that's always been comforting to me. To know that there's some kind of solidarity in my pain or solidarity in my suffering. It's a shared suffering, if you will. And also the fact that there's no shame. There's absolutely no shame in reaching out for help, asking people for help. The person who asks for help is the most humble, intelligent person there is. There's no shame to ask for help. There's no shame to admit that you are struggling. Anybody who says that they don't struggle is a liar. And anybody who does not struggle or who will not admit that they might have a mental health struggle, because we probably all do, I would say is in a state of arrested development. It is my hope that we are able as a society and individually to find creative solutions, effective solutions to our mental health issues. I just had another idea. But I hope as a society we can return to looking after one another. I hope as a society we can return to connection and community and song and dance and things that build that fabric of unity among us. I hope individually we will pay attention to ourselves and seek the help that we so desperately need. That is my video. Please check out the links below. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you have any comments, feel free to write them. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to know if there's any other things you might perchance want my opinion on. And I hope that you have a lovely day. Take care of yourselves. Bye.